Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Always up for exploring new ideas.
Well, today we're diving headfirst into the world of AI and how it's changing the game for teaching English. We've got this incredible paper we're going to unpack.
Oh, this is going to be good.
It's by Professor Brian David Phillips.
I have heard of him.
He teaches at a university in Taiwan, and he's like seriously deep into research on using AI for language teaching. The guy's on the cutting edge.
So, what's he got to say? Is this all theory, or are we getting some practical stuff too?
Oh no, this is way more than just theory. Professor Phillips is all about giving you the tools to actually build your own AI teaching assistants.
No way. Like, we can actually create AI to help us teach?
Yep, using something called GPTs, and he breaks it all down step by step.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What are these GPT things?
So there are two main types he talks about. Custom GPTs.
Custom GPTs.
Those are like designed for specific platforms,
Yeah.
like ChatGPT, but then there are also universal portable GPTs.
Mm-hmm.
Those are more flexible, work across different platforms.
So it's like if you want something really tailored to your needs, you go custom. But if you want something that's kind of like a Swiss Army knife?
Exactly. And get this, Professor Phillips actually created his own custom GPT.
What? Really?
Yeah, it's called Wizard Dumble Gandalf.
Oh, okay, that's a pretty awesome name.
Right. And it's on ChatGPT. He uses it as a kind of blueprint for people to create their own.
Yeah.
He even explains how to customize it, like give it a specific personality,
Oh, wow.
adjust the tone, even add prompts that are related to whatever you're teaching.
So this isn't just some abstract idea. He's actually showing you how to do it.
Exactly. And the things you could do with these GPTs. He talks about using them for oral communication, writing, literature analysis.
Hold on. Like, I can have a GPT that helps my students with pronunciation.
Or imagine a GPT leading a discussion on The Great Gatsby.
Whoa. Okay, now that's thinking outside the box.
And one of the things I found really fascinating,
Yeah.
he talks about how GPTs can really personalize learning. Like you can create a GPT that gives feedback tailored to each student's level.
So it's like every student gets their own personal tutor.
Right. And it gives them instant feedback, too. No more waiting for the teacher to grade papers.
And that makes learning more interactive and fun.
Exactly. So let's talk about how to actually create these GPTs.
All right, let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
He makes it pretty clear, actually, for custom GPTs on ChatGPT.
Okay.
He says the first thing is you got to define the persona and objective. Like, what do you want this GPT to be? A super supportive grammar coach? A vocabulary whiz that cracks jokes?
Right, so it's all about that customization.
Then you input specific instructions for different topics. Adjust the language and tone to match your students.
It's almost like you're writing a character for a play or something.
Kind of. And for universal portable GPTs, the ones that work across platforms, he suggests using a shared folder, like on Google Drive.
Makes sense, so everyone can access them.
Yeah. And he really stresses that these prompts have to be designed to work on any AI platform, so they're super adaptable.
That's smart.
Professor Phillips is a big believer in collaboration, so he's all about clear labeling, making sure those shared prompts are organized so people can find what they need easily.
It's like building a library of resources.
Exactly. So imagine, let's say you're teaching pronunciation. You know how those D sounds can be tricky for some learners?
Oh, tell me that.
He suggests creating a GPT that focuses on those specific sounds, walks students through exercises, gives them that personalized feedback.
That would be so helpful. And I bet students would be way more engaged.
Right. Or, for literature, imagine a GPT that prompts students to pick out symbols in a novel.
Like those aha moments that make literature come alive.
Yeah. And what's really cool is Professor Phillips doesn't just talk about using GPTs for English language teaching.
Oh.
He actually shares how he uses them in his own university classes.
Yeah.
Like, he uses them to analyze films through different critical lenses.
Wow. So we're talking about a tool that can be applied across disciplines.
It shows you how versatile these things are. It's really about sparking those aha moments, making learning more personalized, more engaging.
I'm totally seeing the potential here. But I'm guessing there are some things we need to consider before jumping in, right?
Oh, absolutely. There are always things to think about when it comes to new technology, especially in education. We'll get into that after the break.
You know, one thing that always struck me as super valuable, but also kind of tricky to teach is debate. Getting students to really engage in that back and forth.
Oh, I know what you mean. Debate's so important, but it can be intimidating for some learners.
Right. Like, how do you create that authentic debate experience in a classroom setting? Well, Professor Phillips actually has some really cool ideas on using GPTs for this.
Oh, really? I'm all ears.
So he suggests using custom GPTs to basically simulate a debate opponent for students. The GPT presents counterarguments, pushes back on their points, helps them refine their thinking.
So it's like a virtual sparring partner helping them practice those arguments.
Exactly. And it can be a real confidence booster for students who are maybe a bit shy or hesitant to debate in front of others.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So how do you actually set up these debate GPTs?
Well, he actually gives you a step-by-step process.
Oh, nice.
He starts with prompting students to articulate their stance clearly.
Okay.
Like state your position and explain why you believe this, just to get those foundational thoughts in place.
Right. Get those ideas flowing.
And then the next step is helping them build strong arguments to support their position.
Because a debate's more than just stating an opinion.
Exactly. So he talks about prompting students to break down their arguments into 3 key points.
I like that. It's about structure, right?
Yes. And he emphasizes backing up those points with evidence.
Research, data, examples, that kind of thing.
Right. Anything that strengthens their argument makes it more credible. He's all about that logical structure.
Makes sense. It's like building a solid foundation for their argument.
And he's got this great point about refining language for persuasive impact.
Because it's not just what you say, but how you say it.
Absolutely. So he talks about prompting students to use strong verbs, rhetorical questions, maybe even a bit of emotive language.
To really drive that point home.
Exactly. And then you get to the rebuttals, which is where it gets really fun.
Okay.
This is where the GPT comes in to simulate those back and forth exchanges. It presents counterarguments, forces the student to think on their feet.
It's like that real-time pressure of a debate, but in a safe environment.
And to really prepare them for those unexpected moments in a real debate, he suggests throwing in some curveballs, prompts that challenge them, unexpected evidence.
Keep them on their toes.
Right. It's not just about teaching them to argue, but to think critically and adapt.
That's so important.
Yeah.
What about feedback? How do you assess their performance in these GPT-powered debates?
Oh, he's got that covered too. He's a big fan of structured feedback. So he actually suggests using GPTs to evaluate the arguments and rebuttals.
Wait, the GPT can actually grade their debates?
Pretty much. It can analyze the arguments based on specific criteria.
Like clarity, use of evidence, logical structure.
Exactly. You can even customize it to focus on specific areas you want students to work on. And it takes some of that pressure off teachers, too, gives them more time for individual guidance.
That's pretty amazing. It seems like he's really passionate about equipping students with these essential skills.
He is. And it's not just those hard skills like debate and argumentation. He also talks about how GPTs can help with navigating different social and cultural contexts.
Oh, that's huge, especially for language learners.
Right. Because language is about so much more than just words.
It's about understanding those unspoken rules, those cultural nuances.
Exactly. So he suggests using GPTs to walk students through real-world scenarios, prompting them to practice those culturally specific behaviors and expressions.
Like, imagine a GPT that simulates a dinner party conversation.
That's a great example. They could practice small talk, asking appropriate questions, even using humor in a culturally sensitive way.
It's like having a virtual cultural guide.
Right. And he also talks about practicing politeness and empathy in different situations.
Things like offering condolences or making a complaint in a polite way.
Right. Those things that can be tough to teach but are so crucial in real-life interactions. He actually gives teachers specific prompts for setting up these cultural simulations.
Oh, like what?
Things like, imagine you're meeting a new colleague at a work event. How would you introduce yourself? Or, you need to make a complaint at a restaurant. How would you approach the situation politely?
That's fantastic. It's all about preparing students for the real world.
Exactly. And he even suggests incorporating prompts that really dig into specific cultural nuances, interpreting nonverbal cues.
Understanding humor.
Yeah, navigating social etiquette. It's about going beyond just the language and developing that deeper cultural understanding.
And speaking of preparing students for the real world, his insights on professional communication skills are spot on. I mean, being able to communicate clearly and confidently is so essential.
Absolutely. And he suggests using GPTs to simulate all sorts of professional scenarios like writing emails,
Cover letters.
even practicing for job interviews.
Oh, wow. Imagine a GPT that walks you through a mock interview, gives you feedback on your answers.
It's like having a virtual career coach.
And he also talks about refining resumes, and cover letters using GPTs.
It's like having a personal editor to make sure you're putting your best foot forward.
I love that he's not just focused on those academic skills, but really thinking about the skills students need to succeed in life.
He is. And while all of this might sound super high-tech and futuristic, Professor Phillips is very clear that GPTs are tools.
Not replacements for teachers.
Exactly. He's all about empowering educators, not making them obsolete. The human element is still crucial.
It's that connection between teacher and student that makes all the difference. So are you starting to see how these GPTs could fit into your own teaching?
Yeah, it's definitely got me thinking. But like we said earlier, with any powerful tool, you got to be mindful of how you're using it, especially in education. Right, and Professor Phillips doesn't shy away from those ethical considerations at all. Actually, a big chunk of his paper is dedicated to talking about things like bias, data privacy, and how the role of the teacher might evolve in this whole AI landscape.
It sounds like he's really advocating for a mindful approach, not just jumping on the tech bandwagon without thinking about the implications.
Exactly, and one of the biggest concerns he brings up is the potential for bias in AI algorithms. These GPTs, they're trained on tons of data, and that data can reflect existing societal biases.
Oh, that's a really good point. Because if we're using GPTs to teach language and literature, how can we be sure they're not reinforcing harmful stereotypes or using discriminatory language? That would be a nightmare.
Well, he suggests a few strategies. First, just being aware of that potential for bias, understanding how the algorithms work, where the data comes from, and being on the lookout for any biased language or content.
So it's about developing that critical eye, not just for ourselves, but also teaching our students to question the information they're getting from AI.
Yeah. Exactly. We need to help them become savvy consumers of AI content. He also talks about mitigating bias, being really careful about the data that's used to train these GPTs.
Making sure it represents diverse viewpoints, doesn't reinforce harmful stereotypes, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And thinking carefully about the prompts we're using, too, making sure the language itself isn't introducing or reinforcing bias.
Right, because even subtle things can have a big impact.
Exactly. It's about being intentional and thoughtful every step of the way.
Okay, so bias is one thing. But what about data privacy? I mean, that's a huge concern, especially when we're talking about using AI in schools.
Absolutely. And Professor Phillips is all about transparency. He says schools and institutions need to be upfront with parents and students about what data is being collected, how it's being used, who has access to it, the whole 9 yards.
And getting informed consent from parents, especially with younger students, is crucial.
Totally. And he talks about strong data security measures, to protect student data from any unauthorized access or misuse. It's all about safeguarding that information and building trust.
So it sounds like it comes down to responsible implementation, being aware of these ethical considerations as we start integrating these tools into our classrooms.
Absolutely. But I know what you're thinking.
What am I thinking?
Are robots going to replace teachers? Is that the end of the teaching profession as we know it?
Well, it's a valid question, right? With all the talk about AI and automation. But Professor Phillips actually makes a really strong case for GPTs as partners, not replacements. He sees them as a way to free up teachers to do what they do best.
Things like building relationships with students, creating a supportive learning environment, providing that one-on-one guidance that AI just can't replicate.
Because those human elements are so important, it's about letting GPTs handle the more routine tasks, like grading quizzes or providing feedback on grammar, so teachers can spend more time on those higher-level interactions that require empathy and understanding.
Right. He actually envisions a future where teachers and GPTs are working together, each playing to their strengths to create a richer, more personalized learning experience for students. He's encouraging teachers to see these tools as a way to expand their capabilities and create even more engaging learning environments.
I love that. It's not about AI taking over, but about AI empowering educators.
Exactly. And one of the things that really stood out to me in his work is this call for ongoing exploration and innovation. He knows we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with GPTs in education.
It's like we're at the very beginning of this incredible journey.
Right. He's excited about the potential for personalized learning, creating adaptive pathways tailored to each student's individual needs and learning style. He even talks about using GPTs to revolutionize how we assess language proficiency.
Moving away from standardized tests and towards more authentic assessments that reflect real-world communication skills. Now, that's what I call thinking outside the box.
He's really pushing the boundaries of what education can be.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired.
Me too. It's an exciting time to be in education, that's for sure.
If you're as intrigued by all of this as we are, we highly recommend checking out Professor Phillips' paper. We've included links to it, his custom GPTs, and his YouTube channel in the show notes. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you experimented with GPTs in your own teaching? Share your experiences in the comments.
Let's keep this conversation going.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time.
Breathe deep, close your eyes, and surrender to the cards. Let the rhythm of the symbols take you far. In the dance of the arcana, see your story start to bloom. Every flip, every turn, it's like magic in the room. Tarot trance, feel the vibe, let your spirit take a ride.